What's up, chess player? King's Indian defense is one of the most complicated openings to play in chess, but if you really master it, it's gonna be such a powerful weapon for you to defeat very strong opponents. So let me share with you the key ideas of this opening based on the game of my subscriber, so we can understand what are the typical mistakes and what is the way you should play it to outplay your opponents. My subscriber Mohit Rocks played here as black against a very strong opponent FIDE master here, and well, the game started with the King's Indian, very normal variation, and knight f3 is a classical one. Castles, so the point is that black is giving up the control of the center and tries to attack it afterwards. So let's see whether black succeeded with it. e5 is a very good first step. It's really a pawn sacrifice, but it's not such a big deal because that allows you to open up the diagonal in case white captures it, and there are some knight takes e4 ideas, so e5 is a very solid move here. And then takes. Well, that's one of the most active and main ways to go about it. There is also knight to c6, another idea, so that after d5, you go back to e7, then you remove your knight somewhere, and you play f5, and you start your attack on the king side. And of course, the main idea of the King's Indian is to just deliver a checkmate to your opponent. So let's see what happened here. That is another strategy to open up the diagonal as much as possible so that your bishop is powerful here. Of course, this dark squares bishop is the main thing in the King's Indian defense overall. So rook e8 now creating another threat. What I like is my opponent, my subscriber is creating so many threats for his opponent, and that is very good strategy to make life miserable for your opponent. So that's gonna help you a lot if you do that in your games. Because yes, in most of the cases, a strong opponent is gonna defend, is gonna see those threats, but sooner or later it's so difficult to deal with all of them. So that's gonna be a very good strategy for you. f3, just defending this pawn on e4, and yeah, of course, white's center is still very, very solid here. a6, I'm not really sure what is the point of this move, because b5 is not possible at all. You're not really afraid of knight b5, so that is a typical mistake of kind of low-rated players, although this subscriber has a 2200 rated, so it's a pretty high level already, but a6 is not really a move that helps you, and I suggest you don't make moves that are not useful for you, because, well, it's waste of a time, and time is the most important thing in chess. So a6, yeah, I would prefer to develop the pieces, maybe bishop d7 intending to go knight c6, maybe knight h5 as the engine suggests, just to open up the bishop, and the knight might jump to some really good squares afterwards. So a6, bishop to g5 has been played. Well, white's development is really good, you can't say anything about it, but of course you can try to attack it, and that, yes, it has been played, I guess, but a little bit later on, first knight d7. Well, the drawback of this move is that now the bishop on c8 is still there, very passive, having no moves to go, and that is pretty annoying. You can't move the b pawn because knight c6 would win a queen on the spot, so you should be a little bit careful with being too passive here. King to h1 has been played, and now h6. Yeah, that is how black decided to fight against this activity. And why not to continue? Why not to play g5, pushing the bishop even more back, and then knight f8, knight g6 is an interesting strategy, but at least your pieces are not pinned anymore. So knight f8 has been played here, queen to d2. Yeah, that is a blunder according to the engine. You can't really say that it's a blunder because, I mean, it doesn't lose any pieces here, but f4 instead would stop the g5 idea. And then black is so passive that literally it's so difficult for them to, to go about this position. What do you do after f4? You can't move pretty much any of your pieces. g4 is still not available for you. e4 pawn is untouchable because of the spin. You can never play g5. You're just losing that pawn and opening up the f file. Knight d5 is coming. I mean, that feels very, very sad for black. That is why it was important to play g5 at this point, before your opponent just shuts the whole window for you. So remember to play as active as possible. Knight f8, queen d2, and now still knight e6, g5 hasn't been played, but there is also one tactical opportunity that I missed here. There is knight takes e4 with a double attack. black is threatening to take the bishop on h4 as well as the queen on d2. And that is, I guess, why queen d2 is a blunder, not only because it's not taking everything out of the position, but also allows some tactical opportunities here. So knight a4, if white decides to capture the knight somehow, then we just take the bishop, we have an extra pawn and a pair of bishops, just a beautiful position. If you take the queen here, the knight d2 comes with another tempo, attacking the rook here, and the bishop is still hanging. So once again, not a beautiful situation for white. Yeah, but unfortunately that hasn't been played, and you remember the magic formula that allows you to find the best move in every single chess position, which is checks, captures, and threats. If you follow that, 99% of the situations, you're not gonna miss those beautiful chances like here. So, do we have any checks here? No, we don't. Can we capture something? And literally, the only thing we can take here is the e4 pawn. We can take it with a knight and with a rook. Yes, of course, our knight is pinned here, the queen is under attack, so we need to calculate the variations before doing something that active. But if it works, it works. So it's so important to start in that order so you don't miss your chance. So knight e6 has been played instead, takes. Well, it also helps black when you don't really have any space, when your opponent has a space advantage to exchange some pieces, because afterwards, well, logically enough, you have enough space for your pieces. So that helps black to finish the development. Now the queen will have some space, and that would be simpler. And now knight d5, another blunder from the FIDE master here, from the white side, because once again knight d4 is possible with the same exact idea. And once again, black is not doing it playing g5. So you see how important it is to start with the magic formula. By the way, both for you and your opponent. You also should not forget that you're always playing against a real human being who also has some ideas, some threats in mind, and you always have to take it into account. So here, g5 has been played, an active move, but just not the best one. That is why chess.com says it's a miss here. Bishop f2 takes, and here we have a pretty balanced situation because, well, this bishop is very active. Of course, white can exchange it, and probably that's the best thing to do, but black doesn't really have any significant weaknesses. That is what allows to keep this position balanced here. Bishop d4 has been played c6, well, trying to get some activity. Has some positional risks because this d6 pawn can be isolated afterwards, can be a weakness, but still you need to do something, you need to be active. Maybe c5 was also interesting here, just to force white to decide something about this pawn, but yeah, still has some positional risks, so you have to be careful with that. But remember, the most important thing is to be active in chess. If you need to do that, you should do it, even if it allows some weaknesses. Bishop c6, now of course black is intending the move d5, but it's not that easy because white is placing a lot of pieces there, bishop is coming to c4 probably, and so it's so important to stop the d5 move for white. Queen to f6, instead of defending this pawn, black is creating some counter threats. And I really like this approach. You want to be active, you want to create some counter threats for your opponent. And also you're intending to play rook d8, of course, finishing the development, that would be great. But yeah, you can see that there is a tactical shot here as well. The move d5 seems like it doesn't work, but because of this bishop on e2, is also unprotected in the end of the day. It really is possible, and that is the way to just exchange everything here with queen takes d5, and there is no advantage for white whatsoever. So once again, that is the most active move here because it creates a threat of taking the e4 pawn, and it deals with the only weakness basically you have on the board. So that is the perfect move if it works. So you have to check whether it works. If it does, you just go for it. Queen f6 has been played instead, also quite a good move, I like it, there is nothing bad with it, you just stay still with your pawn on d6 and you have to deal with it somehow. Takes, and finally white plays bishop to c4, and now the bishop is no longer there, so no d5 is possible anymore. Rook to e7, bishop d5, king to e5. Well, it's a very unusual approach, but I quite like it because in the endgame, you don't really have any significant fear to get checkmated. So you can use your king to be in the center, to be as active as possible, and, well, create some difficulties, because basically you have one more active piece than your opponent. If your opponent has a king on h1 and you have it on e5, if it's not in trouble, then it could really help you. So I like this idea. Bishop to c6 now takes, and well, d5 square is covered. There is no isolated pawn anymore, so black's position is fine, no real weaknesses. Rook to c2, f5, but don't go away, because this rook endgame is something truly amazing here. It's gonna be a series of moves where every one of them is a blunder. So Rook's endgames, it's never too late to learn it. You can study it the whole life, and it's still not going to be enough. So let's try to do that together. Takes. There are some open files here, and probably this pawn, because it's a passer now, you can try to push it. Passers in the endgames are incredibly important. It can be a weakness, but it also can be a source for you to really win, to outplay your opponent. Rook a1, c5. I don't get why you don't start with a d5, because, well, it's your passer. But I guess there is no way to really stop d5 for white. Maybe just rook. Yeah, rook d2, you can still play d5, so there is no problem with it. h5, quite a weird move for me. Like, why do you care about this h pawn when you can just push your central pawn? That is the most important thing here. h5 doesn't really feel that logical for me. Yeah, now finally it's coming, b3, d4, and you could see that it's black who probably has the initiative here, creating some difficulties, because as white, I wouldn't really feel that comfortable anymore in this position. Rook to e2, yeah, but of course white has some counterplay against the king here. Rook d5, stopping some rook e5 ideas. Very important to follow your opponent's counterplay. So here, black did exactly what I'm always asking you in my videos. Once your opponent is making a move, stop for a second, think about your ideas, and try to think what is the point of his move. And that was, of course, rook to e5 check, or maybe even rook to e6, preparing the move rook e5 checkmate. That would be something. So rook d5 is stopping all of those ideas, and rook e6 is still has been played, but, well, there is no checkmate idea anymore, and this pawn is still going forward. a5. No, a5 is a mistake here. I mean, you can never be too slow. Time is the most important factor in chess, so you need to be as fast as possible. You need to focus on the really important things, just as in life. So d3 is the only important thing here, just to push your pawn as far as possible. By the way, d2 would be an immediate threat there. You remember that the rook on e6 is hanging there once you play rook to d1. So I see no reason not to play the move d3. Yes, the pawn is hanging on a6, but I mean, you can play c4, d2, immediately creating a threat of promoting. In the end of the day, it's not the number of pawns that matters, but the quality of the pawns. That is why pushing the pawn was a very, very aggressive approach there. Rook a6 has been played, a weird move, which once again allows to push the passer forward. c4, I guess the point is to defend the pawn, but once again, it's not really about the pawns, it's about promoting the pawns, and d3 was such a huge chance here once again. Takes, rook to e2, another very weird move, because now d2 comes with a tempo. Why on earth would you want to do that? I mean, yes, it's a FIDE master, but I don't understand his moves at all. Now rook d2, allowing black to create that very, very strong c2 pawn. And now the position is completely winning for black, but it's not the end of the day, as you remember. King to g1, and now rook to d1, just, yeah, given a check, and it's not possible to stop the promotion. Well, king to h3 doesn't really help either because of g4, and that's gonna be a checkmate here. I mean, white just committed a suicide basically here with all of those moves, allowing black to promote that pawn, to push it forward, and now the game is over. So that is a perfect example for you how you should not play as a rook's endgame. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button to help me promote the content and help people to become better at chess. And in this video, I'm showing you the #1 reason why so many people can't really make any progress in chess. That's gonna be very, very useful, so I definitely recommend you take a look at it.